race people can identify in terms of like a singular black identity, singular white identity, a very strong biracial identity in the sense like I'm biracial and that's my own race.
The tragic mulatta, like you just don't know where you belong.
I am mixed. My mom's black and my dad's white.
Just mixed. That's mixed. Black and white.
Mixed race.
I'm black, and I love it.
Biracial, not one or the other.
Biracial, or mixed?
Yeah, I would consider myself mixed.
So my mom is black. She's an immigrant from Haiti. She came to the United States when she was 10.
My mother's Ethiopian and my father's German American.
My dad is a white American of Pennsylvania Dutch heritage.
I am born from a 100% German mother and then a Brazilian Italian father.
My mom is from the island of Nevis in the Caribbean, and my father's Italian.
My mother, she's from an island in the Caribbean called Antigua, and my father, he's of Jewish descent.
My mother is Jewish and white.
My father is African, and my mother is white.
My mom's Irish and Native American.
My dad is African American and Native American Indian descendants.
People are more quick to assume that I am my mother's child when I'm with her.
People don't assume that my mother is my mother when I'm walking around with her or anything like that.
When I'm with my dad, I never get those questions. People never say, "Oh, is this your daughter? Oh, is this your father?"
My dad has a huge appreciation for his Brazilian heritage, and I definitely identify with that. Not as much as I do with my mom, just because I've spent more time with her.
I have two younger brothers, Andrew and Alex.
I have one older brother. He's my full brother.
They do look like me, I guess. Actually, Alex, the youngest one, he kind of looks a little Mexican.
I have 5 siblings, 3 of which are white and 2 of which are mixed.
One half-brother, he is 20 years older than me. We share the same father, and it's my father who's white, and his mom is white, so he is Caucasian.
I have a younger brother, a half-brother. He's mixed race too. He's white and Japanese, which is an interesting one. So I have a Japanese brother too. Yeah.
We all share the same father, and we all have different mothers, but they are all happen to be multiracial as well.
I kind of preempt people's questions by constantly saying like, oh, I'm black and white, I'm mixed, so that I don't get the question like, what are you?
I get the question a lot, like, what are you? And then I have to like describe what I am and like, or what do people actually mean, like, where am I from, or where are my parents from, or like what's my ethnicity.
I don't get those questions very often from people face to face, and when I do, sometimes I think I don't give them the answer that they want, and they ask like, what are you, or where are you from, or what are your parents?
Oh, like, where are you from? You know, where is your family from? Where are your parents from?
You know, I know what they want to know, that they want to know. They're asking, are you black, are you white, are you black and white?
You know, if I were white or if I were all black, I don't think I would be asked about how I identify in terms of a racial spectrum.
You don't ask someone who's 100% white or who's perceived as 100% white, like, what type of whiteness are you?
But I think I'm definitely questioned more by people of color than white people.
Most of the comments and questions I get about what race I am, or comments about which race I might identify more with, come from black people.
Questioning in an inquisitive way, I don't find offensive.
I guess it depends on the context and like the motives for somebody bringing it up.
It used to make me feel uncomfortable. I don't, now I'm not uncomfortable by it. Now I just kind of understand the fact that people are just curious.
I definitely don't bring up my racial identity.
But you do have to put yourself in a category. You can't just be, so to speak, race.
I know a lot of kids who come from mixed race homes have often felt that they have to identify with one group or the other, but sometimes I think that pressure comes from outside sources.
People often like to have you pick one thing or put you in a box or like kind of have you set an identifier for yourself, and I don't think that's very fair or right.
They want to define me, which they don't really understand how annoying that is because they never have to do that because they're white. Like, period. They're white, they don't have to do that. And they don't get defined in the same way. And it's not as offensive to their sense of self or something when other people are doing that. It's just so annoying. And these are like my best friends too.
The question has come up a lot. You know, which one do you identify as more so? Just say, I don't identify as me being biracial.
Basically saying I'm not black enough or my ancestry isn't black enough, so I can't consider myself a black male, is offensive.
It's about how you relate, and if you relate as you're black and you're mixed, then okay, that's fine. Like, that's how you relate, but I don't relate the same way.
There's a whole other side of me that has a completely separate culture, has a completely separate history.
I have a friend who loves pointing out how my skin color doesn't differ from other white people's, which happens to be the most annoying thing on earth. I'm brown, I'm visibly distinct.
There's a certain association I have with, I guess, the black race more than the white race, only because I'm perceived as a minority or as a person of color. I'm not obviously perceived as white.
I do consider Obama our first black president, and I think I'm being very hypocritical in doing that because I don't think of myself as black, and Obama's just as black as I am.
If you are black and white historically in the United States, you will be considered black. I don't think that's vanished yet, and I think people will get treated like they're black.
It's sort of like the one drop rule that comes up again. You know, it used to be if you were any part of your blood was black, you were considered black.
If you're black, then you're black. You're only black. Like the one drop rule.
Am I fulfilling a white stereotype, a black stereotype, or whatever?
And I'm definitely part of the black community, but that is not my only part of life.
I understand things from person to person. I think any other way would be unfair.
In the 3rd grade, I was taking MCAS, like standardized testing in Massachusetts, and they didn't have the other box yet, and you could only check one box. And it was like, you know, the standard African American, Caucasian, Hispanic, Asian. And I remember I started to cry because I didn't know what box to pick, and my teacher was just like, oh, just check black.
Every time I have a form, it's like a little bit of an internal crisis, like, what should I put?
What I've checked on a standardized test has changed over the years.
My preferred option for standardized testing when you're selecting your race is to choose as many that apply.
I pick other or multiple things if possible, or nothing at all.
Either if there's a mixed race category, then I do that. Although more frequently, I do the African American or multiple on standardized tests.
I check black and white, or multiracial or other.
I check black.
A lot of times it's a questionnaire like about how I feel the MBTA is doing their job, and they ask my race, and I think, why does that matter?
Assume that affirmative action or something like that will be taken into account, then I'll definitely take advantage of it and check black.
When I applied to college, in applying for financial aid, I know my mom was definitely like, make sure you check off the black box.
There are so many economic benefits in colleges and scholarships and fellowships to be African American or be mixed race, and so a lot of times I feel like I'm almost forced to check the African American or the black or the Hispanic, check boxes, even though I personally identify more with my white heritage.
I've half felt guilty about it before, because it's kind of like, am I somebody who should be benefiting from identifying as black? But I do identify as black in addition to white.
I don't feel like I have the face-to-face discrimination, like people aren't going to be like, oh, I'm not going to hire you because you're black. They're going to be like, you're black, but you're light black, so you're even better,
Being biracial, it just kind of more so confuses people.
It's like, well, you know what, when is life not confusing? So I'm just going to sit with that.
When I was younger, there came a point in time when I realized that I was different and I felt different and I wanted to look like all my white friends.
The cultural experience that I had growing up as a mixed person in California and in San Francisco is way different than how I'm treated in Boston and on the East Coast.
Of course, there are always, social pressures in middle school and high school, whatever, to fit into some group, but I've never felt pressure to fit into any group based on race.
Never really consciously tried to fit in with white people, but I do recall trying to fit in with black friends.
I definitely tried to, certainly in the way I talked and stuff like that, but I think I grew out of that. I grew into myself as an individual.
I think when I first came to college, I had the plan that I was gonna try very distinctly to become part of the black community and whatever the black community is here, and become part of this community and whatever that community is here, and I never ended up going to NBSA meetings.
When I was young, I identified as unique just because I classified in a lot of the Hispanic categories of just like middle school, elementary politics.
I never felt different growing up, and I attribute that to the fact that my parents never talked about race. There was never a conversation, to be had where, all right, Nicoya, sit down, we have to talk about some things. People might treat you differently because one of your parents is white and one of them's black, but don't worry about it. That conversation never happened in my household.
My parents always kind of told me I was not necessarily special or different, but wanted to make sure that I knew that people were going to ask me what was up, and wanted to make sure that I knew what was up.
As far as bringing up the fact that I'm mixed and my parents are biracial, we actually don't really talk about that at all much.
Regardless of whether it was good, bad, different, or other, it was just this is who you are, and you are many things.
We were all raised differently, and that there's a difference between all of us, and we all have unique things about our background that are great.
I'm happy with the fact that they tried to reinforce that difficult factor in my life.
I attribute not feeling different to the fact that my parents never talked about it.
So if you didn't grow up with an idea of race, then you wouldn't think about it?
If you talk to whites, they think racism isn't a problem anymore, overwhelmingly. You talk to blacks, they overwhelmingly think it is.
It's definitely a lot more subtle. Everything is modern racism now, so it's a little bit more under the table.
I'm glad that I am mixed. Would have it no other way.
I don't think the race conversation is over. I don't think it'll ever really be over.
Race will always be in the conversation.
When it comes to talking about race, people sometimes get too serious about it, or when people are afraid, they don't want to offend.
It's just a matter of what that conversation is really about.
It's something that's so ingrained into everyone's mind, and it's something that people are really, really conscious about.
If maybe we didn't talk about race as much, it wouldn't be as much of a problem.
We go out in stormy weather, we rarely practice discern. We make love to some weird sin, we seek out the tacit